Hey guys, Youngblood with you, along with Koolaid for another episode of Duality. And again, we're bringing back Wrel to talk with us again for this episode about class balance. So, Wrel, you'd like to say hello?
Hey, how's it going?
And Koolaid?
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. So, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about class balance today, and that's going to kind of encompass a couple different things. First off, kind of what's, how the classes interact with each other, which ones are more used, what we could maybe change. And then some of the things that are actually on the horizon from the roadmaps, because most of the classes are going to be getting a revamp of some sort or another. So I guess the simplest place to start off would be, how do you guys feel right now about how the classes are currently balanced?
You want to go first, Koolaid?
Sure. I actually like class balance for the most part. I think each class has a specific role that they fill. I think Heavy Assault's the one that we're probably going to end up talking about the most. But I actually don't mind that they're a bit strong in like 1v1 matchups because I don't think the game's really balanced around that. Yes, they can be very annoying to try and kill with their shield, but for the most part, I actually really like class balance in this game, and I think, like I said, most classes have a role that they fill, and to me, Heavy Assault, their role is mainly the frontlines infantry killing class.
I'm torn on class balance in Planetside too. I think that, they're balanced well enough against one another. They're balanced like as a class, but I don't really think that I don't think that they really have a solid enough role. We'll talk about it later, of course, but it really depends on what they want to accomplish with classes. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know where to go. That's okay. Go ahead, STL.
Okay. No, I think when we talk about the class balance, and Koolaid, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. The Heavy Assault's going to be kind of the go-to for a lot of people. Now, I typically kind of fall into different category with that just because I use my Heavy Assault a little bit differently. But, I guess, let's put it out there this way. Do you guys agree that the Heavy Assault is kind of where the primary issue is if there is a class imbalance, or do you think that it's, just kind of it's fine as is and there's not a lot of changes that actually need to be made because there is something on the horizon for the Heavy Assault to kind of tone things down?
I think Heavy Assault is the strongest as far as, just straight up killing infantry. I also think there might be a slight problem with Light Assault as well, just that they don't have I think they're the class with the least class role, if that makes sense, or the least amount of, you guys know what I'm trying to say.
They're what they can do well can kind of be accomplished through other classes.
So I take issue kind of with what Koolaid was saying about Heavy Assaults are they're powerful in 1v1, but that's not the way that the game is meant to be played. Or what'd you say?
Yeah, it's not
how it works
it's not
out.
really balanced around 1v1 is what I was trying to say.
But so this is where the problems I feel kind of set in, is that things are balanced around 1v1s, and Planetside 2 right now it plays like a huge team deathmatch. And well, at least when you look at weapon balance, right? Weapons are balanced around a specific number of bullets to kill, and then you maybe have like one damage higher than 1,000 is where they end up. And you can't really make a class that's meant for support with the mentality that X, Y, or Z weapon needs to be able to kill in this amount of time in a 1v1 situation. And I know that sounds like abstract, but or maybe you guys don't even understand what I'm talking about at all, but it's the game is framed, just the game overall is framed for 1v1s, but the class balance does not support it. And I can go into it later, but yeah, we'll go into it later.
Okay. Well, and I guess here's a interesting question. This was brought up by Hamley on one of my videos, and he said, I'd like your thoughts on how important class balance really is. And he kind of goes into maxes, and that's kind of the exception to all of this, but do you guys feel that the classes really even need to be balanced amongst each other, considering they fit separate roles, or do you think there should be a little bit more separation between them?
Well, Actually, that may be where I'm coming from, where I don't think they really need to be because there's different roles. And going back to heavy assault and how I said it, it is the best 1v1 class. I still don't think that makes them too overpowered because you take like a medic. For every person that a heavy assault can kill because they're the best, 1v1 class, a medic can revive twice as many in half the amount of time. So that's why I don't think they really need to be balanced around that, 1v1 type of thing, even though...
Okay, let me put you in this situation, Koolaid. If you had a squad, right? Squad, and you have to go take a base, why would you pull anything outside of heavy assaults and medics?
Well, if usually you pull medics, max, engineers for that.
Okay, well that's kind of even worse a point, because maxes feel they're maxes are like they're your big bruisers, and my cat needs to get away. Oh, okay. It's heavy assaults, I feel, are kind of in the same path. They can kill infantry the best. They have the best. I really feel they have the best anti-vehicle methods because, well, not just because of lock-ons, but because engineers have to set up a turret. They have to stay in one place unless they're using anti-vehicle mines. And
that actually might. Oh, sorry to cut you off, but that actually might have something to do with my mindset on heavy assaults too. I don't feel that they're the best. If I have to take out a tank or something like that, I always use light assault or engineer, and I look at heavies a little bit differently in that light than a lot of other people would, I think.
what? Okay. I mean, that makes sense. But that's it sounds more like personal preference, or actually, it sounds more like situational. Like if you're in a tower, light assault, hover across, C4 tank, right? You're safe there. The situation makes sense. But for the grand scheme of things, I mean, you're still going to be able to kill all the vehicles with heavy assaults. You're still going to be able to kill all the infantry with heavy assaults. And when you die, you can get picked back up. The disadvantage is that you don't have ammo. Okay, ammo doesn't really matter, because if you're assaulting an enemy base, if you die, you're going to respawn somewhere, right? Respawn, full health, full ammo, full rockets, whatever. And I think class balance in this game is so diluted into being a very, like, they're balanced among one another. Like you play one class because you want to play one class, not necessarily because you need one class. Whereas if they were more role based, and I like talking about tribes because it's such a great game, but if you want an artillery strike, basically on enemy turrets, you can't punch through turrets with most classes, at least not very efficiently. But you can do it from miles away with a heavy with a mortar, and so that, okay, the enemy has defenses. This is how we need to deal with them. That is a role right now. Aside from medics picking people up when they're dead, and heavies don't really have a role. Heavies can do everything, and engineers laying ammo. There's a lack. I feel a lack of a very specific of a necessity to have a certain class.
I think that has a lot to do with all the classes, having access to, or all the classes having crossover things like C4 and different ways to actually take out vehicles, and just a lot of classes can cross over, whereas you're talking about tribes where you have to have one specific class to do a certain thing. And I guess that's what you meant when the classes were diluted, I guess.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'll take that one step further and say that you have to we have to basically balance our classes around being general and not having a role. Okay, maybe not have to, but the way that the game is currently designed, it has to be very, very general. Things do have to cross the gap, because not everything is organized. In Battlefield and Tribes or whatever, you have a very specific number of players. So you can see, or even if you have a squad in Planetside 2, you have a very specific number of players, right? You can see, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 medics, we have 1, 2, 3 heavies. Okay, we're going to need to switch one out for a heavy, or switch one out for an engineer, or whatever. You know that. But when it's just, like 100 people versus like 86 people who are completely random, maybe some are in a squad, maybe some are in a different squad, there's no there's a lack of cohesion with how the flow of a fight actually works. It's just basically everybody running around doing things. They're just running around, doing things the best they can, and responding to threats on an individual basis. Okay, I see that there is a tank there. I'm going to pull my max. I'm going to AV, and that's it.
Now, do you think there really needs to even be that crossover, considering all the different ways you have to get back into battle in a game like Planetside? When we talk about Planetside, let's say you are a light assault or an infiltrator. It doesn't really matter. You're primarily going against anti-infantry, and an armor column pushes up. Now, where it's at right now, for example, a light assault's got the C4, or hell, even a medic's got C4, or an engineer's got the ability to pull an AV turret, or a heavy can shoot a rocket launcher. Basically, every class, and now even including infiltrator with the explosive crossbow, which, I mean, granted, doesn't do much to armor, but it has something it can do now. In a game like Planetside, it just feels like there's so many different ways that you can spawn, whether that be in a galaxy or a sunder or at a tower or at a different base. You can flank in on a flash. It doesn't really matter. It feels like the mechanics are built into the game to where you don't need to have those crossovers.
That's a really, really good point. And the game is conflicting with itself because it wants to lead you to believe that that death is something that you can just shrug off. I mean, if you're pushing a capture point, right? What do? It's you and how many guys? It's that one big push, and then you try to defend it against people as they come at you. And if you don't have the crossovers, then death is kind of a serious issue. And those situations are I think they're so few and far between where they really shouldn't be. So because the situations are so those types of situations are limited, that you kind of fostered this every man for himself mentality, opposed to having a specific role and having to do a certain job. And then you also have the cert barrier. Like, if I buy C4 on one class, well, that's the only class that I have C4 on, so that's the only class that I can use. It's okay. What's a better example, actually? So engineers, right? Engineers, they don't have access to anything that's anti-vehicle until you unlock it, right? So if heavy assault is the only thing that you have, it's maybe not the most efficient at being anti-vehicle, but it's what you have for default, so it's what you got to go with. And that it kind of, I guess you can constrain people to a certain type of gameplay, and I think that's another one of those things that they're trying not to do with Planetside 2. So there's a lot of conflicting mentalities within the game design, and I wish I had more time to make my thoughts more coherent.
Well, you just have to. I think what you're trying to say is it's more casual, which you kind of have to do nowadays to get more players, basically.
Free-to-play game. Welcome to the world of casual. That's what it is. Yeah, I agree.
I kind of go back to what you were talking about as far as there being like almost like a differing perspective on what the game actually wants you to do and what we want for the balance. And I think when we talk about this, there's so many classes that are designed to fit certain roles, but when you kind of start talking about roles, then you kind of get into areas where like specialties aren't necessarily, I guess, the roles are set, but there's so much crossover between class that flat out, I mean, you can be successful with just about any of them, but those special abilities that make you successful then kind of highlight and make other things more problematic. For example, the medic's role is primarily to be supporting your team, healing people, reviving people, laying down some cover fire if you have to. But then you throw on the fact that the medic can now carry C4, and I think the C4 is something that we kind of keep going back to, but medic runs around with a C4 satchel, and all of a sudden now you've got somebody that can heal themselves on their way into C4 a max, and that's a pretty significant crossover into like the light assault. So how there is almost a crisis of an identity crisis there between the specific roles and the way the classes are laid out with how the gameplay actually ends up as a result, basically making some classes in a lot of situations kind of null and void.
It's either you'd have to make it so every class has access to, if you basically wanted to like strip C4 from everything, right? and give it just to the light assault. That's their thing. C4 is their thing. So in order to do that, you'd have to make sure that everybody has C4 unlocked by default. That would be one thing. It would give the class a very specific role, sure, but then because the game is so casual, I think that I mean, how many times do you see, you know, a Sunderer parked in a really bad spot, like on top of a cliff or something, and people, they don't pull light assaults, they don't jump down, they don't go assault the tower. I mean, some of the smarter people do, but most of the time they'll just whip out a sniper rifle and then they'll sit there because it feels like I'm doing something. So they don't know, just keep going back to the game being casual, they don't know that that's not what you should be doing. That's not the most effective way to deal with the current situation. And they only know what they're comfortable with. So
that's actually something I used to get on our outfit when we first started getting together and first started doing ops. Is whenever there was a Sunday up, it was basically my job to take care of it, and that usually involved engineer, AT mines, you know, drop potting on it or taking a lightning to it or something. But now, since, you know, players in our outfit have gotten a lot more experience, we've gotten a lot better. That's like the number one thing everybody does. It's like a fight over the Sunder. But I can see what you're saying, that a lot of newer players or a lot of more casual players wouldn't understand to do that.
And you bring up a good point right there, is that you need to, the game has to be either structured in a way that everybody needs to be in a squad so that everybody can communicate, or it has to be structured in a way that it doesn't really matter, which is what we are right now. It doesn't really matter what you do because everybody's little, you know, you're a beautiful snowflake and you can go play the game however you want. But if you're in a squad, then roles become important because things can they can be very, very specific. But if you're I'm the, you know, lone wolf mentality. I want to be able to jump on a Liberator, stick my knife in it, and as long as I'm, you know, if it can't shake me off its back or whatever, I want it to be able to eventually kill it. So I want to be able to do everything in the game. When I see a tank rolling down and I'm an infiltrator, I want to be able to, I don't know, stuff my knife in its turret barrel and it'll blow itself up. I want to be able to do everything, and that's the mentality, and it's the wrong mentality, I feel, that the game is currently framed for.
What if they forced you into a squad when you logged into the game? Like say they had an Indar squad, an Esamir squad, or a platoon, because it'd have to be pretty big. You could leave it at any time, but when you logged in, you automatically get put into a squad. Something like that. Would that work, you think?
I think that when the mission system rolls around, that might be something that's more viable. But right now, I mean, how many people are you just going to log in, then you're going to hear share, you know, love after love or whatever. You know, you're going to hear music just like blaring in the background, and that's just going to be it. And it's going to be somebody's personal experience, and they're going to be like, how do I leave a squad? I don't know, but I hate everything. I'm just going to log off.
It was always Party in the USA is the Warpgate song that I heard a lot when I first started playing.
Awesome. Well, I guess I think we've come to terms with the fact that the game, being a free-to-play model, is going to cater to casual players, and I think we all kind of agreed here as well. And you know, Wrel, you're talking about how you want to have the ability to, you know, take down a Liberator with your knife as an infiltrator, but you kind of even admitted that doesn't necessarily fit into the role. Where does it go? Is there a way that we could possibly change the game in a way that there were more specified roles, there was less crossover, but it would still be... What would have to be done to not push away casual players in that regard?
Honestly, I don't know, because I do have these sorts of personal conflicts. I think that you'd have to make everything more, and this sounds kind of far and away, but you'd have to take away the ability for everybody to just be able to drop pod in wherever they want, or spawn wherever they want. You'd have to make death more meaningful, because by making death more meaningful, then you make the classes more meaningful. You create more cohesion. You know, even if you're outside of a squad, you want to be near somebody so that they can pick you up, because, oh man, it's going to be a long walk. back from the next base or back from the warp gate or whatever. And so there needs to be more logistics. And I know this sounds, it sounds really, it doesn't pertain to classes in particular, but that is the sort of groundwork that you would need to make the game. You need to make death have more meaning, just as a start, and then past that, I think that the forcing people into squads thing that Koolaid was saying, it's a possibility, especially if everything. I guess especially when the mission system comes into place and it kind of directs people, that would be good. More options for changing loadouts in the field. So instead of having to respawn, also de-emphasizing the fact that that dying is just another thing. It's so many moving parts that you really can't. I really can't just say that, oh, this is what you do and this is how you do it. But yeah, that's kind of where I'd begin.
Yeah, I don't know. And part of me's torn on all of this because I'm the type of player that I don't use the crossover classes very well. Like for me, I typically use a certain class for very specific roles. So for me, I'm going to use my Infiltrator or my Light Assault for basically all of my anti-infantry roles. I like the mobility and the flanking ability versus the just tank it up, throw on your shield, and go to town heavy assault type role. If I'm going to go against vehicles, I'm almost always going to pull out my heavy assault, and that's what I use my heavy for. I'm very rarely using my heavy in anti-infantry situations. Engineers almost specifically only used when I'm in a vehicle just to be able to repair my own vehicle, or if I'm running with the outfit and repairing maxes. And then, medic is only going to be used basically for support situations. If I'm playing solo, there's a very low situation or chance that I'm going to be using medic. But I never got to take my medic and actually go, hunt down vehicles or try and play that frontline attack type role. So, I don't know. I'm wondering how many people rely on that crossover between classes, or versus how many people play more like me, where they do have specific classes that they use for very specific situations, almost the way it's more designed and set up.
I definitely have very specific roles for all my classes. I actually really don't play heavy assault at all, just because I find it incredibly boring. But like I said, I use Infiltrator and Light Assault as my main infantry killing classes. Engineer is my main anti-vehicle class, just because of AT mines, not even the anti-vehicle turret so much. And then medic, I rarely play medic, but I actually think medic, if I wanted to just try to go on long kill streaks, I actually think medic is the best class in the game for that too. I personally think medic's the most overpowered class in the game. I think way more so than heavy assault. But I actually feel that way about medics in every first-person shooter I play that has medics. Going back to Battlefield 4, they were ridiculously strong. I guess that's just my own personal opinion, but I don't know why I don't play medic more because of that, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, medic is definitely a force multiplier, if you will, especially in a game like Planetside. In a game like Battlefield, where maybe you're playing TDM or Conquest, where tickets are there and deaths actually matter, the medic is problematic because it's keeping people alive, but it is going against the ticket count overall too. And in Planetside, most of the time, you're a medic. You get people up constantly, and they can continue to fight and continue to move on. There's not really a downside to not having medics in there. So, I've heard people complain about the medic, various things from just the ability to heal people and keep the battles going, or the ability to pick up maxes. I think bothers a lot of people too. I guess, Wrel, how do you feel about the medic? I mean, do you think it's in a good place, or do you think it needs more or less ability? What are your thoughts on it?
Medic is honestly my least played class, because you're expected to pick people up, and that's what I end up doing when I play medic. I run around and I babysit people, and that's kind of how it is.
I think that's why I don't play it that much either.
Yeah, and but like you were saying, Koolaid, is if you wanted to go on really long streaks, medic is the class to do it, because there's no degradation there. You're not going to take health damage and then be, at 900 health versus the next guy who has 1,000 health against you. You're always going to be topped off, and your personal shield, is going to come back, more quickly than like a heavy assault overshield will. And
also, pretty much if you're taking fire and you have your AOE health on, you're pretty much going to be able to absorb at least one more bullet than every other class too.
Yeah, and that actually goes back to just how the game is framed around that stupid how many shots to kill. 8 shots to kill. Okay, well if I heal, 3 more health between bullets landing on me, then I'm going to be able to take an extra shot, and you're not going to be able to kill me. And it's, but to touch on as far as STL, you were saying, are medics overpowered, or it's kind of how you're saying it.
Yeah.
I think that medics. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
Kind of goes back. Sorry for cutting you off again, but you were mentioning earlier how death isn't that big a deal unless you're actually playing in a squad and doing squad type stuff, and that's where medic really shows just how powerful it can be and how important it is. And I mean, anytime you're playing in a squad and actually trying to capture a base or something, if you don't have medics, you're not getting very far, basically.
Well, and I think something that really just highlights the importance and effectiveness of the medic is, there's been a couple posts on the SOE forums, specifically about like name your favorite medics or give a shout out to your favorite medic. And I mean, there was dozens of pages of people just going on there and saying so and so is an excellent medic. People that aren't in their outfits or even cross faction, they see these medics that are out there doing these wonderful things that are helping drive stay alive, helping picking people up. And I think the fact that people are able to name people that they don't even know, just off the top of their head, just indicates, one, how effective it can be, but two, how many people probably don't use it to its advantage. Because if everybody's doing that, you probably wouldn't remember these specific people that are always doing it.
And it's probably the easiest thing in the game to do.
That's true.
I think nobody likes to die. When you're your max, or the max is on the ground, and you're like yelling for medic, please pick me up. And then somebody comes over to actually help you. You see this guy's name more than once, and his name does pop up on the screen. It tells you who he is. So just with that constant reminder of somebody doing you favors, that sticks out. And no other class can really boast that, except for if you're in a max and you have a guy repairing you, because the recon. Who threw the recon dart? George.
Right.
Throw the recon dart. No, nobody else gets recognition. So I think medics are definitely the most recognized class for sure.
I think we should talk about maxes a little bit. I'd like to hear Wrel's opinions on where he thinks maxes stand and how he'd like to see them changed a little bit.
Is that cool with you, SEL? Is that what you want to hear?
Go for it, big dog.
I guess a lot of people have problems with max units completely throwing off the flow of the infantry game, right? What do you want to do with or whenever you have a problem, call up a team of maxes, and then you'll take care of it. Everybody grab a max. Okay, we're gonna crash.
They're basically your special forces commando unit. Except
they're not. It's just like it's really fat people that you can't deal with. It's they take a lot of hits, and they do a lot of damage, and they have very specific counters. So it's just like anything that's in scale. They're basically like vehicles. It's an armor column inside of a hallway, and because they're so easy to grab, it makes them a very annoying thing to deal with. Maxes, I feel like they should serve a more specific purpose than they do right now. I think that heavy assaults, if heavy assaults want to be the I guess the brawlers as it is, and don't let maxes do that as well. Give maxes the ability, make maxes good at like pushing, or make maxes good at maybe support fire, or specifically anti-vehicle. And they're good at everything right now, but they do oftentimes need somebody there to back them up. So they're supposed to be a force multiplier. Honestly, if you're running around with nanite auto repair, then I can stop a tower in a max unit just as well as I can use it, or with any other class. And should they be like that? I mean, should I just be a harder infantry to take down? I guess that's up for debate.
I think you can kit.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think you can kit out a max to be good at any specific role, especially if you're going to kind of alternate. You know, you got one type of weapon on one arm and another type on another arm. But I think a lot of people, for the most part, are going to use the same weapon on both arms. And then in that situation, they can be good, but they need to go back and re-equip if they're going to kind of deal with changing situations that are actually going on. I mean, I think there's some noticeable, like, alternatives, like Falcons, for example, are really good at hitting both infantry and vehicles. But, you know, there's an interesting, I guess, difference of opinion on the, through the community. And I've seen numerous posts about people saying, maxes are too expensive, for how many counters there are to maxes, and that how easily they are, to be killed, via rockets and, vehicles and C4. But then on the flip side of it, we also get, the opinion where it's, maxes are really easy to pull and they're easy to use. And, they're kind of tanky. So it's an interesting difference of opinion in the community based on how the max is balanced. And I wonder how much of that goes back to just like, air versus ground. People that play on the ground don't like the air. People in the air don't like lock-ons. And I just don't know where it actually is balanced as far as like the resources go versus how effective they actually are. I'm personally torn on it.
Well, some of it actually has to do with the other balancing thing, which with maxes is, some people have the resource boosts or membership and some people don't. So people that have the resource boosts are going to be able to pull them that much more often. And it also comes down to just skilled players. I mean, if you know what you're doing in a max, it's not hard to build up more resources in the max than when you actually started before you pulled the max. I mean, when I was doing my max videos, I could just pull max after max after max after max. And that's where I think the biggest problem with them is they're supposed to be, I think, a specialized unit. But see, my opinion is obviously that they're just too easy to pull.
And that's where a lot of problems come in. I mean, there's nothing to stop you from playing a max like a normal infantry. Like, if you want, you can sit in the back and you can just kill things all day and you don't have a fear of dying if you play like that. If you're on the front lines doing what a max is, quote unquote, intended to do, you become a bigger target. There are specific counters that can deal with you. I mean, you are going to be able to walk into a guy with C4. It's just going to happen. But if you, there's nothing that's keeping you from playing like normal infantry, or and that goes back to them being just very, very beefed up, like stronger, opposed to having a real role. I mean, they don't have a real role aside from just being stronger infantry, and I think that is probably their weakest point. I mean, we can debate, all day long whether or not, maxes are just, they're too hard or they're too easy to pull or, whatever. But when it comes down to it, just why are they in the game outside of being just stronger versions of you?
Well, I think the reason they're in a game is, again, part of the problem. It's just that, they're to break stalemates, basically, and that's the solution, and that's the problem in itself. And you were talking about their specific roles. I think NC maxes do have another role with the Vanguard shield, just strictly for pushing, but the VS and TR maxes definitely don't. They need a big revamp on their Empire specific max abilities.
Have you seen the changes they're proposing with the max abilities on the roadmaps?
I actually haven't looked at them yet.
The NC Max is supposed to get the ability to sprint with the shield up. Now, apparently, it's going to be easier to land shots, so I'm assuming the shield's going to kind of be swinging back and forth as you run. TR is speeding up the entry and exit into the lockdown. So basically, it's you're not as much of a sitting duck. So I think a lot of the problems with the TR Max is that you lock down in a corner and you go to town. Then all of a sudden your support falls apart or somebody flanks you, and then you're just screwed. So now you're going to be able to get out of those situations a little bit quicker. And then the VS one was a little bit more vague. It basically just said balance adjustments to make the reward match the risk a little bit better. So I'm not really sure what they're planning to do with that outside of, again, maybe making just another balance pass as far as making them a little bit stronger but a little bit weaker at the same time, kind of like the glass cannon fiasco.
I think they just need to scrap.
It was a nice way for them to say that we're not going to let you turn it off. we're not gonna let you turn it off, but we're gonna do something else instead. And it's not what I want on my Zoe Max.
I don't
just
get
wanna
why they
turn it off.
wouldn't. Yeah, I don't get why they wouldn't just give the VS Max like a. My dog's running around back here. Like a meter, a charge meter, or that you could turn on and off. It just seems like the easiest, simplest solution to me.
I don't know. I don't know.
I haven't really been a fan of the special abilities, in general. I mean, obviously, I've taken I've taken advantage of the NC one for sure. The Aegis shield and the ability to reload while you got your shield up is a tremendous advantage, and I'm sure it's a pain in the ass for other people to deal with.
See, I never use it. I personally use charge still.
That's the only ability that I like is the Aegis. It's the only one that makes sense.
I think it's cool. I think there's a spot for it. I don't use it that much just because I feel I get more out of charge, but I do think there's a spot for Aegis where the other two are just kind of blah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Aegis has been really, really useful for me. Zoe was obviously abused for how long while it was out there. So I mean, it had its day in the shade, and poor TR. I mean, I feel pretty bad for them with the lockdown, both on the I don't mind it so much on the Prowler, but man, seeing that on the Max is pretty painful for them. So I don't know. I would be fine probably just scrapping the Max abilities in general, but I guess if for nothing else, it's just another thing that you have to try and balance and make effective in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Max units. Yeah. We don't even know. We don't even know where to go with max units. I mean,
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do with them?
And I don't know. I mean, Koolaid, you bring up an interesting dilemma. You said that a skilled max player can have another one ready for them the second theirs dies, and I'm not opposed to the fact that you can rack up more resources and kills and get ready that way. So maybe the simplest solution is just making keeping the resources about where they are and just increasing the timer on a max, so you can't just get one a little bit quicker. I don't know.
Well, they could do something where they charged you both infantry resources and a chunk of vehicle resources or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I guess talking about Max, it's kind of a natural transition into Engineer. And, again, like I said, I use Engineer pretty much specifically if I'm playing with the outfit to keep the Maxes up, or if I'm, flying or driving just to keep my vehicle repaired. Engineer's not a real good anti-infantry class. I mean, it's got, some good weapons at least, but yeah, I mean, there's no abilities there that really help out. And, I think, Wrel, and you and I chatted a little bit earlier about how, they've got the ability to drop down ammo, but in most situations for most players in a big fight, you're going to die before you run out of ammo anyway. So outside of just the ability to spam more rockets for the heavies, there's not really a good ability there for the Engineer.
They do have Claymore mines as well, or anti-personnel mines, and the all-amazing anti-infantry turret.
I love the turret.
I love it.
I do too.
I'm in the process of doing an Engineer class guide, and I've actually had a lot of fun with the anti-infantry turret. Definitely a lot more than, since the anti-vehicle turret came out, I basically had never re-equipped the anti-infantry turret, but I've actually found some good uses for it. It's kind of more of a suppression tool than anything, but I've actually had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, they've got some interesting ideas for the Engineer coming in August. The two things that they mentioned were like a defensive deployable. So I don't know if you guys have seen Vindicor's concept on Reddit, and I'll post a link to that. But basically, it's just a deployable shield that you can pop up, that your team could just kind of hide behind, especially if you're out in like the middle of a field. The flip side of that was they also talked about like squad deployables. So like the ability to drop like a little miniature terminal basically anywhere that you wanted. So I thought both of those were kind of interesting ideas and would probably provide some interesting, variety to the class at least.
The little deployable terminal thing is something that I think talked about in the video like a year ago that I thought would be a cool idea.
Yeah, it needs to be in the game. It needs to. And I mean, before they talked about medics giving spawn points, that needs to be in the game too, I think. It's right now. It's just things are so lackluster. I don't know. I'm getting bored with the amount of options that we have.
Yeah. So I guess let's go to the one that we know is coming, and it's actually in the roadmaps right now, and that's with the heavy assault and the ramp up time for the shield. Basically, they said no more instant win. It's focusing more on positioning and preparation for actually utilizing that. Do you guys have any strong feelings about that, or how long that actually needs to be, or hell, if it even needs to happen or not?
0.5 seconds, I think. 0.5 seconds is weapons with a quick time to kill, so your close quarters weapons on top of your latency advantage, so if you're playing aggressively, that you'll actually be able to take out a heavy assault by flanking appropriately. And that's kind of the point, right? So you can't just, oh, I got hit, it's time for me to turn on my shield and then turn around and kill the guy. That's what they're trying to avoid. So I think that just something small like that, it'll make it so heavy assaults, like if they're instead of rounding a corner, like they jump out in the middle of a hallway, then start aim down sights and start laying down the fire, and then as soon as people realize that they're there, then they can turn on their shield. That's not going to happen. It's going to be like, okay, turn on my shield, then around the corner, then deal with things. And it's going to be a small, but I think it's going to be a very, very important change. I'm actually glad that they went this route instead of what I've been asking constantly for, directional shields. I know many people have as well, because you can get rewarded for outflanking a heavy assault. But I think a ramp up time, it makes more sense, and it'll be good. That'll be good.
Yeah, I think if it actually works like you were just explaining, I do think that'll be good. And heavy assaults are like my number one nemesis when I'm playing SMG Infiltrator, because they're the ones that can just turn on you, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So if it works how Wrel was just describing, I'll be in heaven.
Yep, I agree. And we're starting to ramble on like we've done the last couple times we've talked. So let's just get to one last thing here. I guess the last two classes and their kind of proposed changes. Let's first start with the Infiltrator. It just kind of came through. We got the Stalker Cloak. We got the little mobile spotting device. Koolaid, this is kind of your forte. So how do you feel this impacted the balance for Infiltrator? And do you think they're in a good spot right now, or a little too good or too bad?
I don't think it had a massive impact on the class. I like Stalker Cloak for the reason that a lot of people like to take the whole, just want to infiltrate bases and, play like that. And I think Stalker Cloak gives you the means to do that now. The only thing that I would like to see more of, and it doesn't directly, it does, but I'd like to see more things to hack within the game. Not necessarily just vehicles, but something, to give infiltrators more of a bigger role in the hacking department. But overall, I think infiltrators in a really good spot. I think they are really helpful to a team now that, infiltrators know how powerful detect devices are, motion spotters. 6 months ago, I didn't see a lot of infiltrators spamming darts around, and now I see it everywhere. So I think infiltrators are in a pretty good spot.
I feel the same way, to be honest. It makes sense. Stalker Cloak is just, it's actually one of those things that I think that there should be a stalker like in every squad now, or like at least one in a platoon, like dedicated stalker, just for the information that they can relay. They could just sit, off in a corner somewhere and ping people with callouts, and there's not much you can do except search for them, which distracts forces from, like, if you're trying to push into a point or something along those lines. And it's really, really nasty once you're good with it. And yeah, I mean, you have a crappy weapon, but just the amount of information, the amount of havoc that you can wreak on people's minds, I think it's a really, really fun thing that they added to the game.
I think it's fun and borders on. It's funny because I agree. I think it can be incredibly effective, and in certain situations, it also borders on novelty. But they are the biggest pain in the ass when you're trying to cap a point. You cap the point, and you walk away, and then all of a sudden, you see it start flickering again. And you go back, and you start shooting into corners, and you don't get any kills, and then you cap the point, and walk away, and then all of a sudden, it starts flickering again, and you're like, "Son of a bitch, where's my dark light flashlight?"
And you know what? Just the fact that you have to equip a dark light flashlight is doing your offensive a justice. It's because it takes away from your advanced laser sight, It makes it more difficult to use to just run-of-the-mill combat. And yeah, if you put it on a secondary, I don't view that as a problem. Okay, somebody finds me with their secondary with their dark light flashlight on, I can kill you because I saw you before you saw me.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think incredibly effective, incredibly a pain in the ass when used the right way. And I think some people are just having fun trolling. Like I was fighting at the Crown on the B point about last week at some point, and that kept happening. I'd walk away and I'd keep flickering. I'd walk away and keep flickering, and I didn't have a dark light on my class, so I would have either had to run all the way back to a terminal to put it on and come back, or so I'm sitting there shooting at corners, and he's taunting me through chat.
That's the best. That's the best.
So I mean, it was hilarious, and it was something I hadn't really experienced in the game before. But at the same time, I was sitting there pulling out my hair, thinking, "This is just crazy." So, yeah,
It's also made me realize just how absolutely amazing the commissioner is. I've been having a lot more fun just putting on the, not even because of the stalker cloak, just because it forces me to use pistols. It makes things a little more challenging. But I've actually just been having a lot of fun going on commissioner streaks.
One thing that I don't hear anybody, not enough credit is given for the changes made to cloak. The fact that you can actually deep cloak, and you are like really, really deep cloak now. On every cloak, it's not just stalker. It's when you sit there, you crouch and you sit. When you turn a corner in your hunter cloak, that's long enough for the enemy to run past you, and then you can hit him in the back of the head. It's been very, very valuable, even with my nano armor, to a much lesser degree, obviously. But it's the changes to the cloak, I think were just amazing. They're absolutely amazing. It's where infiltrators need to be.
Yeah, that was actually probably the biggest thing we got in the update, was that fix or change to the deep cloak.
It is. I mean, and it is effective. We talked in an early episode of Duality, because they've got some slots slated for Light Assault in July for some changes. The only thing really mentioned was Akimbo, which I still think is hilarious. So I'll just kind of breeze over that one. But the last one that I want to talk about was the medic. It's tentatively slated for May, and they're looking at longer range healing options and deployable regeneration options. So, perhaps you're kind of like the remote spotting ability, or, like an ammo pack. You can set something down and allow your team to kind of circle back and get healed. That, to me, I'm torn on. Obviously would be effective. The question is that something that could maybe be a little too effective?
I don't have a problem with that, even though I said the medic, I think, is the most overpowered class in the game. One thing I didn't talk about the medic, another reason why I think they're so strong, is because they have some of the best guns in the game with the assault rifles. And for some reason that is like that in BF3 too. But I would like to see them have some sort of option like the Stalker Cloak, where if they want to be a better healer, if they want an extended range on their healing gun, where they have to give up their main weapon.
I actually like that idea.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
And I mean, something like that, I think, would be a fair trade-off. My issue with this deployable regeneration option, and again, this is all just hearsay, considering that it's not even in PTS, but you're effectively taking on the same role in multiple locations. You're healing somebody while you are, healing somebody somewhere else. You've been your own force multiplier, which I guess in a way isn't that different from what it can do now by healing reviving somebody with the medic tool and throwing a, revive grenade. But for some reason, this just feels like it goes a little bit too far if it's going to play out the way I think it is.
I don't know. I think, it's all speculation until numbers enter the equation, but to me, that's like the direction that I would like things to go, because you're focusing now on more staying power, opposed to just having people, randomly die and that's it. You see it with galaxies now too. So galaxies and Sunderers can now, squad deploy while on the move. So you're putting more emphasis on the locations that you fight, instead of just being able to. You're less expendable, and I think that if they were to make death more important, then this would be very, very significant. And hopefully they do head that route, especially with instant action. Like if they were to just take out instant action, then things would be very, very different.
Yeah, totally agree.
I do like more healing as well, since so many medics just don't heal. They think their only role is to revive. So anything where I don't have to actually depend on going to the medic and sitting there spamming, I need heals while he's looking off in the distance, I think might be good.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
That
that's
drives me
something I
nuts.
didn't even consider. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are so many of them that just don't actually take on that role. So, I mean, if this is something, even if the few medics that are doing well are then able to provide support versus just changing current player mentalities, I mean, yeah, that's something that could definitely be worthwhile.
Just press F, people. Just
Right,
press F.
seriously.
You don't got to look at me. You don't got to change weapons. Just press the F key.
Just run with yourself glowing green and everything will be fine.
Exactly.
One thing about the changes to, if you look at the Infiltrator, what they did, and you look at what they're planning for the medic, I think that plays into what we were talking about earlier, where they're getting more defined roles, I guess you could say, which is a good thing. I think.
Yeah. No, I support more defined roles wholeheartedly.
Well, you can't bring that up and then also not bring up the fact that crossbow bolts can now have detect darts.
Right.
Yeah. Infiltrators are crying about that. Oh, my roll.
See, I didn't cry about that at all, because honestly, I mean, I just did a video on the crossbow, and my opinion is basically that the detect bolts are okay, but they last 10 seconds, and I hate giving up my secondary weapon on any classes. I personally will not run them ever, unless maybe I'm playing engineer and can, like a support engineer. But other than that, I don't think they're all that great.
Yeah, I mean, if you have this goes back to the whole, very, very root of the issue. Root of the issue is the class balance. Like, okay, are we going to give people the ability to do basically whatever they want, or are we going to force them into a defined role? And yeah, infiltrators are always going to be better at spamming darts and whatever, but just the fact that other people have it is an injustice. And I don't know, it's funny because the crossbow is fine in the game that we have right now, because classes are not defined in such a way where you need classes to do certain things. And yeah, I don't know, just the whole hubbubaloo about it was ridiculous.
Yeah, they're not that powerful. Same as the explosive bolts. They're pretty poopy, if you ask me.
They're not real strong.
Did you watch my video where I almost soloed that mag? That would have been glorious.
Would have been a special moment for you.
Unfortunately, I failed.
Yeah, what can you do? All right, guys. Well, we're going on pretty close to an hour here, so I guess we'll save everybody's ears and time. You guys have any closing thoughts that you want to get out there regarding all this?
What game do you want to play? Do you want to play the game where everybody has a role, everybody's in a squad, and things are very, very refined, like you pick a specific class when you need to do a specific thing? Or do you want to play the game where everybody can basically do whatever they want, are not completely reliant on other people? And that's the question. So,
and just to give you my answer, because I kind of bounced around a little bit through this, for me, option A is what I would prefer to see. I would rather see more defined roles. And I think the framework of the game is set up to be a combined arms type game. You've got air vehicles, you've got ground vehicles, you've got attack vehicles, you've got transport vehicles, and then you've got the 6 different classes that you can choose from. I think the framework is all there to have that combined arms experience with specialized roles. How we could make those changes, though, is where I kind of start scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you guys, or with STL at least, where I like to define roles. And I think the last video we did with the player progression could actually tie into that as well, somehow, if there was more defined class roles. And I think with, like I said, with the Infiltrator update and the Medic update, it looks like they are trying to go in that route a little bit. So I think that's a good thing.
All right, perfect. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time. As always, make sure you are supporting both of their channels. Get out there, sub if you haven't. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for another one coming on. Koolaid, Wrel, say goodbye.
And take it easy.
Later.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one, everybody.
Woo!